Hello, you're back here to read part two of The Fall of Troy with me. I've tried to record this a couple times, so hopefully the third time is a charm. And we ended with the plan of the horse, and they were going to put their warriors in it. And I may have mentioned this already. I can't remember. I videoed this 3 times, but I don't know if I could be a warrior. I'd probably be more of like a musician type or like a thinker, but like a creative soul. Um, I definitely wouldn't want to be one of the warriors inside the horse because not only do you get a little bit, I don't know, do you guys get, um, I always have to draw on prior knowledge. That's one of the things I do as a teacher is like try to bring up a similar thing that happened to you so you could relate a little bit. But have you ever felt like you don't want people to be that close to you, especially in certain circumstances, like in an elevator, on a plane? Or my thing is like when I'm eating, I don't want to be between two people. I don't know why. Or like I don't want to be deep in a booth because I feel like there's no escape. Um, at church, I kind of feel like that too. I want to be able to escape quickly. Why is that? My aunt is like that. She's very claustrophobic. And especially just think of like being up against all these like hot, sweaty Greek soldiers and this wooden horse that's sitting on the beach all day. Like, it just does not sound good, but whatever. I don't know if anyone else is like that, but if you are, let me know because then I'll know like you watch this and you're with me here. Okay, so they're gonna plan to come up with this plan of the horse. They're gonna lie the Trojans. It all seems a little like dishonorable to me, but I want to know what you guys think. Top of 284. A night came when the plan was carried out. Then the last day of Troy dawned. On the wall, the Trojan watchers saw with astonishment two sights, each as startling as the other. In front of the Scaean gates stood an enormous figure of a horse. It's not very neighborly, is it, that horse? I wouldn't want to sit in the horse because my voice would be hoarse. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't feel that stable. Okay, sorry, I had to do it, guys. It was utterly horrible. Such a thing as no one had ever seen. An apparition so strange that it was vaguely terrifying, even though there was no sound or movement coming from it. No sound or movement anywhere. Indeed, the noisy Greek camp was hushed. Nothing was stirring there, and the ships were gone. Only one conclusion seemed possible. The Greeks had given up. They had sailed for Greece. They had accepted defeat. All Troy exulted. Her long warfare was over. Her sufferings lay behind her. Does anyone else think it's weird that Troy is compared to a woman here, like about to be penetrated? Yikes. The people flocked to the abandoned Greek camp to see the sights. Here Achilles had sulked for so long. There Agamemnon's tent had stood. This was the quarters of the trickster, Odysseus. What rapture to see the places empty, nothing in them now to fear. At last they drifted back to where the monstrosity, the wooden horse, stood, and they gathered around it, puzzled what to do with it. Then the Greek who had been left behind in the camp discovered himself to them. His name was Sinon, and he was the most plausible speaker. That means he's the best liar and charlatan and con man that the Greeks had. He was seized and dragged to Priam. Remember, Priam is Hector and Paris' father, the king of Troy, weeping and protesting that he no longer wanted to be a Greek. The story he told was one of Odysseus' masterpieces. Pallas Athena had been exceedingly angry, Sinon said, at the theft of the Palladium, and the Greeks in terror had sent to the oracle to ask how they could appease her. The oracle answered, with blood and with a maiden slain, you calmed the winds when you first came Troy. When first you came to Troy. With blood must your return be sought. With a Greek life makes expiation. He himself, Sinon, told Priam, was a wretched victim chosen to be sacrificed. Hold on, let me pause and make sure this doesn't freeze. Okay, so I don't know if it's okay to lie about the gods. I know that theft is unacceptable, and if I don't understand why lies are acceptable. I'm just thinking of the ancient Greeks and their values. Why are lies acceptable? Because they are the theft of truth. Like, I would think that this would be frowned upon. And the very act of going into Athena's temple and like scoring off something, to me, these seem like heinous acts. Maybe it was to honor her, so she accepted it, and maybe the trick was so clever, maybe it was thought of by Athena. I know I read one myth that said, like, she sent Odysseus the dream and the trick because she liked Odysseus, she wanted to help him. Maybe she, in this myth, maybe she thinks it's so funny that he came up with it and it was entertaining to her, so maybe it was accepted by the gods because it was entertaining enough, and they had fought long enough that seemed acceptable for them to bend the rules of warfare. I don't know, but I really hate this next part. All was ready for the awful rite, which was to be carried out just before the Greeks' departure. But in the night, he managed to escape and hidden in the swamp and had watched the ship sail away. So this is Sinon lying. It was a good tale, and the Trojans never questioned it. They pitied Sinon and assured him that he should henceforth live as one of themselves. So it befell that by false cunning and pretended tears, those were conquered whom the great Diomedes had never overcome, nor savage Achilles, nor 10 years of warfare, nor 1,000 ships. For Sinon did not forget the second part of his story. The wooden horse had been made, he said, as a votive offering to Athena, and the reason for its immense size was to discourage the Trojans from taking it into the city. What the Greeks had hoped for was that the Trojans would destroy it, and so drawn down upon them Athena's anger. This is pretty clever. Another myth I heard about the horses that they claimed that they built the horse to Lord Poseidon, since that's his symbol, and since Poseidon is like kind of the vehicle that they get home. Poseidon is the god of the ocean, so that's his symbol. It was paying homage to Poseidon. So that's another part of the story that I've heard. Placed in the city, it would turn her favor to them and away from the Greeks. So these are all the lies that Sinon is telling. The story was clever enough to have had by itself, in all probability, the desired effect. But Poseidon, the most bitter of all the gods against Troy, contrived an addition which made the issue certain. The priest Laocoon, when the horse was first discovered, had been urgent with the Trojans to destroy it. So as soon as he saw it, he said, no, we're not bringing this in. Same thing with Priam's daughter, Cassandra. She echoed his warning, but no one ever listened to her, and she had gone back to the palace before Sinon appeared. Laocoon and his 2 sons heard his story with suspicion. So they don't like Sinon's story. They were the doubters. As Sinon finished, suddenly over the sea came 2 fearful serpents swimming to the land. Once there, they glided straight to Laocoon. They wrapped their huge coils around him, and the 2 lads, they crushed the life out of them. Then they disappeared within Athena's temple. Okay, so did Poseidon send these serpents? I'm not quite sure. It seems like he did, because he favors the Greeks at this point in the story, but pay attention, because in the Odyssey he does not favor some of the Greeks. He holds a long grudge that Poseidon. You don't want to piss him off. You don't want to piss off Poseidon. Okay, next page. There could be no further hesitation. To the horrified spectators, Laocoon had been punished for opposing the entry of the horse, which most certainly no one else would do. All the people cried, bring the carven image in, bear it to Athena, fit gift for the child of Zeus. Who of the young but hurried forth? Who of the old would stay at home? With song and rejoicing they brought death in, treachery and destruction. So it seems like there's been a change in narrator here. Like this first stanza is the Trojans speaking, and then the second stanza is more like a warning, like it's the Greeks telling the story of how they destroyed the Trojans, or Hamilton speaking about how the Trojans were stolen. It may be a special song or like a special poem within the song too, since it's set apart. They dragged the horse through the gates and up to the temple of Athena. Then, rejoicing their good fortune, believing the war had ended and Athena's favor restored to them, they went to their houses in peace as they had not for 10 years. Okay, I think there's some warnings here. Don't ever think that that you can relax and be safe. Don't ever think that the gods have you in their favor. Don't be too sure of yourself. Sometimes even when your own eyes can deceive you. Like, they surely saw that there were no Greek ships around, and yet that wasn't true. So other things are like, you should not accept something that seems like it's free, like it may be too good to be true, right? So there's always a catch. In the middle of the night, the door of the horse opened. One by one, the chieftains let themselves down. They stole to the gates and threw them wide, and into the sleeping town marched the Greek army. What they have first to do could be carried out silently. Fires were started in buildings throughout the city. By the time the Trojans were awake, before they realized what had happened, while they were struggling in their armor, Troy was burning. They rushed out to the field, one by one in confusion. Bands of soldiers were waiting there to strike each man down before he could join himself to others. It was not fighting, it was butchery. P.S. That's a comma splice right there. It was not fighting, it was butchery. You got two subjects, two verbs. Come on, Hamilton. She doesn't like to use commas anyways, but she used one here and it's not strong enough. Or maybe the editor did. I think right here, this is an attitude change from Hamilton. It was not fighting, it was butchery. I think this is a judgment. Normally, she keeps her tone pretty neutral. She has this tone of kind of just a storyteller, a fact teller, but here she's casting judgment on this, I think. Like it's a cautionary tone. Very many died without ever a chance of dealing a blow in return. In the more distant parts of the town, the Trojans were able to gather together here and there, and then it was the Greeks that suffered. They were borne down by desperate men who wanted only to kill before they were killed. They knew that the one safety for the conquered was to hope for no safety. The spirit often turned the victors into the vanquished. The quickest-witted Trojans tore off their own armor and put on that of the dead Greeks, and many a Greek, thinking he was joining friends, discovered too late that they were enemies and paid for his error with his life. On top of the houses, they tore up the roofs and hurled the beams down upon the Greeks. An entire tower standing on the roof of Priam's palace was lifted from its foundations and toppled over. Exulting, the defenders saw it fall and annihilate a great band who were forcing the palace doors. But the success brought only a short respite. Others rushed up, carrying a huge beam. Over the debris of the tower and the crushed bodies, they battered the doors with it. It crashed through, and the Greeks were in the palace before the Trojans could leave the roof. In the inner courtyard around the altar were the women and children and one man, the old king. He's an old king, and there's women and children, so I don't know about this next action. You guys will have to see the tone here with me and see if you can tell if this is honorable or dishonorable. Achilles had spared Priam, but Achilles' son struck him down before the eyes of his wife and daughter. Okay, so is it that Priam escaped once, but he wasn't clever enough to do it again? Or was it that Achilles' son dishonorably kind of like struck this old man down in front of his own family? This is kind of sad. Surely didn't the Greeks have rules about hostages? I mean, they did keep the women. Oh, spoiler alert. By now the end was near. The contest from the first had been unequal. Too many Trojans had been slaughtered in the first surprise. The Greeks could not be beaten back anywhere. Sorry. Slowly the defense ceased. Before morning, all the leaders were dead except one. Aphrodite's son Aeneas, alone among the Trojan chiefs, escaped. Some of you guys told me in the Edpuzzle you really like Aeneas. He's your favorite. He fought the Greeks as long as he could find a living Trojan to stand with him. But as the slaughter spread and death came near, he thought of his home, the helpless people he had left there. He could do nothing more for Troy, but perhaps something could be done for them. He hurried to them, his old dad, his little son, his wife. Oh, she doesn't make it out, guys. And as he went to his mother, Aphrodite appeared to him, urging him on and keeping him safe from the flames and from the Greeks. Even with the goddess' help, he could not save his wife. When they left the house, she got separated from him and was killed. But the other he brought away through the enemy, past the gates, out into the country, his father on his shoulders, his son clinging to his hand. No one but a divinity could have saved him, and Aphrodite was the only one of the gods that day that helped a Trojan. Ooh. There's a different tone there. Did you guys notice that? She helped Helen too. She got her out of the city and took her to Menelaus. He received her gladly, and as she sailed for Greece, she was with him. I wonder why he received her gladly. That makes me think that, she was kidnapped, maybe. Was she happy to be received by Menelaus? It says that she was helped and that she's out of the city and she went back home. I don't know. We just don't know about Helen. When morning came, what had been the proudest city in Asia was a fiery ruin. All that was left of Troy was a band of helpless captive women whose husbands were dead, whose children had been taken from them. They were waiting for their masters to carry them overseas to slavery. I don't know about you, but as a new mom, I wouldn't want to live if that happened to me. I know that's so sad, but you become a different person when you have a little baby, and wow, I couldn't want to live without her now. When she was born, I felt like I had known her my whole life when she was put onto my chest, like this little person I knew. So I imagine that some of the Trojan women probably committed suicide. Chief among the captives was the old queen Hecuba and her daughter-in-law, Hector's wife, Andromache. And remember, she had a son, Astyanax. For Hecuba, all was ended. Crouched on the ground, she saw the Greek ships getting ready, and she watched the city burn. Troy is no longer, she told herself, and I, who am I? A slave men drive like cattle, an old gray woman that has no home. What sorrow is there that is not mine? Country lost, and husband and children. Glory of all of my house brought low. I think your city and your family being destroyed, it would be very hard to figure out who you are. You know, you don't realize how important your city is, your hometown is. It's like, it's your stomping grounds, and those things taken from you. I do want to be a feminist and say, oh no, come on, Hecuba, fight. But, with everyone destroyed that you loved and you cared for, what is there? She's having a very serious identity crisis. Even worse, way worse than an empty nester. What sorrow is, and all the women around her answered, we stand at the same point of pain. We too are slaves. Our children are crying, calling us with their tears. Mother, I am alone. To the dark ships now they drive me, and I cannot see you, mother. One woman still had her child. Andromache held her in her arms her son Astyanax, the little boy who had once shrunk back from his father's high-crested helmet. So he must be about 10 years old, or he could be 5, we're not quite sure. He's so young, she thought, they will let me take him with me. But from the Greek camp a herald came to her and spoke faltering words. He told her that she must not hate him for the news he brought to her against his will. Her son? She broke in. Not that he does not go with me? He answered, the boy must die, be thrown down from the towering wall of Troy. Now let it be done. Endure like a brave woman. Think you are alone. One woman and a slave, and no help anywhere. She knew what he said was true. There was no help. She said goodbye to her child. Weeping, my little one? There. You cannot know what awaits for you. How will it be? Falling down, all broken, and none to pity. Kiss me, never again. Come closer. Your mother who bore you. Put your arms around my neck. Now kiss me, lips to lips. The soldiers carried him away. Just before they threw him from the wall, they had killed on Achilles' grave a young girl, Hecuba's daughter, Polyxena. With the death of Hector's son, Troy's last sacrifice was accomplished. The women waiting for the ships and watched the end. Troy had perished, the great city. Only the red flame now lives there. The dust is rising, spreading out like a great wing of smoke, and all is hidden. We now are gone, one here, one there, and Troy is gone forever. Farewell, dear city. Farewell, my country where my children lived. There below the Greek ships wait. Oh my gosh, I hate this reading so much. Oh.